everyone, Tiffany here with another scrapbooking process video and my first installment of Make a Mess Monday, which I will tell you a little more about in just a minute. I'm also using the April mood board from the Hip Kit Club, which you see on the screen here. And the April mood board from the Hip Kit Club is awesome. You can participate without using any Hip Kit Club products or being a member. All you have to do is use the mood board to inspire your project and then link it up on their Facebook group, and you can be entered to win a goodie bag of scrapbooking supplies. So I'm going to link to their blog post about it, and you guys can play along and it'll be really fun. So I'm just using some watercolor here to make a sunburst in kind of a rainbow of colors, and that's inspired by the center photo here on the mood board. For that, I'm using some Artist Loft cold pressed watercolor paper. It's 9x12, and I got it on super sale at Michael's or somewhere. Actually, I purchased it for my son to use. He's 6 now. I think he was like 4 when I bought it, and he didn't like the texture, so now it's in my scrap room instead. And the watercolors that I'm using are from the kids craft section of Target. I think the brand name is Modern Kids, but there's a whole section of cool kids art supplies, and these were in there. So I am just using water and then different colors here to make a rainbow effect. And rather than using primary colors like red and orange and yellow and blue, I am using pinks and corals, and you'll see kind of a citron green and an aqua blue and the orchid that's in the kit, and that's just to kind of go along with the color palette that I've chosen. And so Make a Mess Monday. I'm not going to be doing this every week, but I'm hoping to do it a few times a month, and by sharing it with you guys, I'm hoping it will motivate me to keep on experimenting. It's not Mixed Media Monday because I am no expert. In fact, this is the very first time that I've used watercolor on a layout at all, I think. It's definitely the first time I've used it in this quantity, like as a background paper, and I just really wanted to give some things a shot and play. So my challenge to you is to play along. Think of some technique that's, especially something that's messy, that's out of your comfort zone, and give it a try. You'll see through watching this video that this layout takes many detours, and it almost goes in the recycling bin more than once. I actually almost didn't even post this video, but my husband encouraged me that he thought it turned out pretty well in the end. And maybe by seeing me putz around and screw things up and keep working and end up with something that I like pretty well in the end, you guys will also be inspired to just give something new a shot. So I'm no expert, but maybe we can just play together. So here's my sunburst basically done. I'm just blending the borders between the two colors a little bit, and I should heat it with my heat gun, but my husband's watching hockey, so I don't. I just set it aside to dry. And that ends up being one of the first mistakes that ends up turning out okay in the end. So I'm grabbing some white cardstock, and this is just some really inexpensive cardstock that's not a true white, and I'm going to use it as a backing paper. I'm planning to adhere my watercolor down on one side and then some pattern paper on the other. So I'm just flipping through trying to decide what might make a good batch, and I'm going to do this Wordsmith paper from Studio Calico. I hit on that pretty quickly, and I really love this paper anyway, so I think it's going to work well. And part of the reason is that the picture in the center on the right hand side has like black and white with a little bit of color, and that's kind of what I'm using as inspiration here. So this paper is more like 9 inches wide, but I want to do a 2/3 and 1/3 arrangement, I guess you could say. So I'm going to cut this Studio Calico Lemon Lush paper down to 4 inches wide, and I'm going to take off the border strip, and my plan is to just layer it on top of the watercolor paper and adhere it all down to this base. But I pretty quickly realized that I don't like that. I feel like it needs to be a little more grounded, and so I take the white cardstock away and I go and grab some black cardstock instead, also from my stash. And I'm just going to use that to do a narrow border around the outside edge. I'm thinking about that, and I'm not totally convinced, so I'm going to move on and start working on the next little bit, and that is pulling out especially some vellum, and I think I also do some cardstock die cuts here, and I want to try to keep the vellum on the right especially color coordinated with the watercolor that the pieces are sitting on. And then I'm just pulling some other pieces that I'm thinking might go in the black and white section. You may have noticed that I don't have a photo yet, and I'm thinking about a photo of myself, but again, this whole thing is more about playing than anything, and so I'm not 100% certain what I'm going to do. And that ends up making for some interesting changes later in the layout as well. This whole playing thing might not be the way that I want to scrapbook. This layout took me about an hour and a half, and it's over 2 days, so definitely on the longer side for me. I decided pretty quickly that I don't like the stuff on the black and white side, but I think I do like the vellum, so I'm just kind of arranging it and trying to get a good balance. And to my eye on the video, this is looking really busy already, but in real life I thought it looked pretty good, so I'm going to just keep pulling some other little bits and pieces. That purple section is really bare, so I know I need to fill that in a bit. And anything that's a cardstock die cut here is from the Studio Calico Lemon Lush ephemera pack, and all of the vellum is from the Maggie Holmes Style Board vellum die cuts, as well as that little gold piece, and all of that came in the kit. And I'm snapping a photo with my phone because I'm about to knock all of this off so that I can trim the paper down to mat it on the cardstock. And yeah, I realized that I probably did that in the totally wrong order. So I'm just going to go around the edge and take off, I think I take off about a half an inch so that it's going to be a 1/4 of an inch border. I may be wrong. That might be half an inch. I'm not sure. I think it's about an 1/8 of an inch border actually. So here's another one of my happy mistakes. I still have damp watercolor paper. So when I go to cut it, it's not a clean cut. It's a really, really rough edge because it's damp, and I decided I like that actually. So sorry I'm out of frame, but I'm just taking the edge of my scissors and I'm going around and distressing the other edges that actually did cut pretty cleanly. And I start to do the same thing with this paper, but you can't really see it because it's got such a white background. So I'm going to grab my black soot distress ink, and I'm going to ink this pretty liberally. Usually I do a really fine line, but I'm actually getting quite a bit of ink on there so that when I go back with my scissors, you'll be able to see the roughed up edge a little better. And I'm out of the frame again. I really apologize, guys. It's something I have to practice on. My camera doesn't show me what I'm taping. I have to stand up to see it, so it's hard when I'm sitting down to make sure that I'm where I need to be. So I've got distressed edges, and it's all trimmed down to fit on my mat, and I'm going to use my ATG to make sure that all these edges are stuck down pretty well. And like I said, I'm looking for 8 inches of watercolor paper and 4 inches of pattern paper. And I was thinking about leaving some space on the inside without adhesive so I could tuck things under it, but I put adhesive on the wrong side. So it's all getting tucked down, or stuck down rather. And then I'm just going to go around the edges and ruffle them up a bit for some more dimension. And dig in the whole artsy kind of distress. The next thing I'm going to do is start laying down my vellum and cardstock die cuts again, and I have sped this up a bit, back up to about 4 times speed so that you don't have to watch me do this for 20 minutes. I don't have a lot of rhyme and reason here. I'm mostly trying to kind of scatter, intermingle larger shapes with smaller shapes and make sure it's somewhat even across the page. And I've decided to add gold to the purple section as well because I don't have a lot of that orchid in the vellum die cuts. I'm using some Scotch Quick Dry adhesive to glue these down, and I'm mostly just trying to hide the adhesive behind a darker colored or patterned section, and then I'm also planning to add some things on top of the vellum to hide the adhesive. So I'm just going ahead and committing to these and sticking them down. And it's not really wanting to stick. And actually, in this video, in some areas, you can really see the adhesive more than I feel like you can eventually in real life, maybe because of how it dries. So now I'm adding some sequins, and these are from the Hip Kit Club exclusive mix, so they match all of the products really well. You can see I got a little extra glob there, so I took a tiny bit of scratch paper to pull that up. And that circle there is actually 2 pieces glued on top of each other. There's a gold polka dot underneath and a aqua piece on top, and then kind of again using the sequins to cover up the adhesive. and still kind of going with the idea that I want to keep in the same color scheme. So green sequins in the green section and pink in the pink. And as I'm working, I'm getting the feeling like there's kind of too many big elements in this section, but I'm not sure what to do about it exactly, so I'm just pressing forward. And very shortly you'll see me take a break for the evening and come back in the morning, and I forgot to hit record, so I actually do end up pulling up several of these pieces of vellum using my craft knife, and you'll see them over on the side when the video comes back right about now. Or not. Now. Okay, there we go. So now I've chosen a picture, and I've picked this photo, black and white photo of my two boys from the, Easter Sunday. And so I've pulled up a lot of the big flowery bits, and then I'm also just there pulling up a piece that's totally going to be underneath the photo. I was envisioning a horizontal photo, and I ended up using a vertical one. So some of the larger pieces are gone, especially the floral ones, and they're sitting over there on the side because at this point I'm planning to still use them on some other project. And then you can see my watercolors there. I'm just going to go back in and watercolor over these little splotches of white where my craft knife and the glue pulled up the watercolor paper. This is one really nice thing about using watercolor paper is it's pretty forgiving. I can blend those little spots of white away pretty easily. And when it dries, it's really hard to see in real life actually. It turns out pretty good. So I'm just going through with each color and sort of doing some doctoring, fixing up these spaces that I've completely torn my paper apart. I told you it was going to be a layout with a lot of detours. At this point, I'm already liking the page a lot better without those distracting florals, especially the ones with two colors. And now I'm just deciding if I wanted to use distress ink or how I want to frame this picture. And I'm moving it over some so it doesn't say hell, it says he instead. I think that's good. And in just a second, you'll see that I'm going to grab my Heidi Swap Color Shine in Black Velvet. And I'm planning to draw a frame around the picture. And I think I don't need to use my craft mat because it's all going to be on top of the layout. It's not going to be flicked or splattered or misted, so it should be fine. And that ends up being another big mistake. First, I'm grabbing some watercolor paper and this scrap of cardstock to just see how it soaks into the paper and see how drawing it's going to work. And here is where I spill it all over the place. So I cut out the cleanup of that mess, and I'm using a craft mat now, as you can see. The worst part of that is that all of those lovely vellum die cuts are totally ruined. They're just black ink. It's a mess. I can't get it off. So those go in the trash. Very sad. But my craft mat's okay and my table's okay, so I guess I should just chalk it up to it's just paper and it's going to be okay. I marked underneath the edges of the photo so I can get an idea of how big I want this frame to be. And I'm just literally taking the end of the nozzle like I would to splatter, and instead I'm using it like a pen, and I'm just drawing a nice sketchy frame. This works really well with the sketchy frame on the paper, I think. It matches quite well without being like a heavy marker line. And it also has that tiny, tiny bit of sparkle, which I really like, that the Color Shine mists do have. Vellum and ink don't play super well together, so I'm just kind of cleaning it up a bit where I've gotten ink. And there is some splatter there as well, and I just leave that. It's a messy layout. That's what it's going to be. And I've learned my lesson, so I'm using my heat gun to make sure that it's nice and dry before I stick my photo down. And I actually, that's me cleaning up that vellum again, making sure it's all the way dry. I did get a tiny bit of ink splatter on the back of my photo, so that I just was wiping it up. And now that's my photo placement. So I'm going to go ahead and get that adhered as well. I'm really happy with the way that frame turned out. I think that was a great idea. I was going to try to lift that vellum up over it, but it's stuck down really tight, so it's going to have to stay there. Now I've changed to Claudine Helmuth Matte Medium adhesive. I just can't decide what to do to make this vellum and sequins stick on the way I want it to. The pieces that I tried to take off were stuck really well. This piece basically fell off when I tried to move it around a little. It wouldn't stick back down, so who knows. That matte medium is really, really strong, so Now I've got my wax paper there. I cut off the time when I went to look for these thickers. I have grabbed thickers in a bunch of different colors, and then this awesome black and white thicker from Studio Calico. This is the Sketchbook font in charcoal, and I'm going to use that for the words you and world, and I'm going to use these other thickers to make color. I start out with doing this in the wrong order and realize I need to start with yellow. So the yellow is just for my stash. I don't have the name of it. The green is Sprinkles in Cucumber. The L is Dear Lizzie in Treasure. The O is Amy Tan's Other Half in Aqua. And the purple is Fantastic Font in Wine. So I've got a different color for each one of those. And then I'm using the Teresa Collins Basically Essential tiny tile letters for the word my, and then back to the Sketchbook for world. And I'm just going to try to decide the best way to orient this. I'm looking all around. I want to make sure that I have a feeling there for a second that I want to do the black and white mostly on the black and white and the color mostly on the color. But I want to make sure that I'm not competing too much with the black text and stuff on the background on that wordsmith sheet. So I like the way that looks pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and stick those bad boys down. Now that I'm at this point, it all goes pretty quickly. Some of these thickers, especially the older chipboard ones, definitely need a little adhesive help. So just dabbing on some adhesive to go on the background there. And that Dear Lizzie thicker is, I think, Seafoam is the color. Treasure is the font. All of them have glitter except for the R. And I do go back with my Wink of Stella pen and add a little sparkle to it at the end, but it's after I take pictures, so you actually don't get to see that. Look for it in the Killikit video. So there's that. My title is all done. I'm just sticking it down and making sure it looks right, and I'm trying to decide what else it needs. And I think that there needs to be a little embellishment on the black and white side. So I'm just doing 3 white enamel dots in the top left and bottom right corner. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some enamel dots to the colored side as well. So I'm starting out with some gold, and then I'm going to do, again, just groups, little groupings here and there, an enamel dot every now and then in the colors that are in the sunburst line, I guess you would say. So those are all the ones that match, that I had pulled for use with the kit. And again, that one piece of vellum, it's kind of curled a little, and the paper underneath is warped too, and it does not want to stay. So I'm hoping that the quick dry will help. So now I'm just digging down into my stash for some pink and coral and yellow enamel dots. And you can see that I have them all cut into strips. So they're all separated by color, and that makes it really easy for me to find colors that match exactly without looking through every single package of my mind's eye dots that I own. Again, I'm doing this in a fairly random fashion, some groups of 3, some groups of 2. I'm just quickly getting them down and just kind of playing around with it. I do use the last of those darker pink dots. And of course, that's exciting. I always love being able to throw away that little piece of backing. The next thing I'm going to do is grab those Teresa Collins letters again, and just down here on the bottom right-hand corner, I'm going to put Easter 2014. That's the day that this photo was taken. I did some family pictures too, but I had the hardest time getting a good shot of the 2 boys. My little one especially was just not having it. So it's not the greatest picture of them ever, but it's pretty indicative of their personalities right now, so I thought I should capture it. And that bit of black is just going to help, I think, draw the eye down through the page. And the next thing that I'm going to do is grab my vellum small Studio Calico letters, and I'm going to put the boys' initials on the photo in the aqua shade. So there's going to be a K in the top left corner for Kian, and a J down in the bottom right hand side for Jack. And once I finish that, I think I'm done. So I'm going to be showing you some close-ups, but I actually end up pulling up that mason jar that's just to the right of my hand right now, because the black cap especially is super distracting. So unfortunately you won't be able to see that on the video, but you will see it in the close-up photos at the end. And what I end up doing is pulling that off and actually using a circle punch to punch a larger circle, like a 2-inch circle, out of the We Are Memory Keepers sheer vellum gold script paper, and then a smaller, like 1 3/4 punch of the Maggie Holmes teal bokeh vellum. And after these close-ups, I will be doing some still photos where you'll be able to see that. So here's the whole picture, and you can see that added vellum on the right, and this is a close-up of it. If you would like to see these photos as stills instead of on the video, you can check out my photo bucket or my Pinterest, which are linked below. And I hope you have a great crafty week. Thanks so much for watching.